Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Jack Power Show, episode 2. Hopefully, you're coming in after listening to episode 1, The Launch. If you haven't done so, make sure to go check that out. Nate and I just kind of described what this show is. But we have a very special episode today. Longtime NFL coach, 26 years at the NFL level, Kevin Spencer, will be joining us today. We had a very awesome conversation with him.
Oh, yeah, we got to talk about his illustrious career, the highs, the lows, the lessons learned, and a lot of really interesting player stories. As a Chargers fan, I was beaming from ear to ear throughout a lot of this conversation. If you're just a football guy, you're going to love this conversation. I can promise you that. And if you have any sort of interest in working as a coach or becoming one, he has a lot of phenomenal insights that I know will make you better and put you closer to that goal. So I think you guys are going to absolutely love this conversation.
And before we take you to that interview, I kind of just want to break down who Kevin Spencer was. He played actually lacrosse in college, and he actually became friends with Bill Belichick through playing lacrosse, out of all things. Ended up staying in touch with him after being rivals on the field, was hired by him with the Cleveland Browns. Only a year he was there, went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, was 2003 Special Teams Coach of the Year, won the Super Bowl, in fact, with the Steelers in 2006, and then would make his way to Arizona for a brief stint along with the Chargers before he became a special teams consultant with Iowa, the Hawkeyes, and the Big Ten for a little bit. And then a year with the Patriots, reuniting him with Bill Belichick, and then right back to the Hawkeyes. And now he's kind of in retirement mode, as he might like to say, and helping other high schools out as he goes along.
Without further ado, guys, here's Kevin Spencer. We hope you enjoy the conversation.
Browns, new head coach.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
It was
Todd Monken.
It was kind of initially it was a shock because they talked about the young guys, Shieldhouse and Udinsky from Jacksonville, and then those guys were in the mix, and they Todd Monken's name came up occasionally. Jimmy Schwartz, of course, he's still the coordinator. He supposedly walked out of the office yesterday when they told him he didn't get the job, but after you kind of do your homework on the demise of the Browns right now, it definitely needs a tremendous offensive overhaul. And granted, these young guys, I think if you have a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, I think everybody wants to hire you just because you're drinking the same water he's drinking. And, I kind of get that. And these kids are all very intelligent. But you just didn't see them, coming in and have to change the culture of this program. And when you start reading up on Todd Monken, he's had success collegiately, obviously, at Georgia. He was a head coach at Southern Miss, and he turned it around in his third year. He's had success with varying quarterbacks. He was down with Jameis Winston in Tampa when he had that, 5,000 yard season. Although I think it was 31 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. It was some crazy statistic. So he's had successes with quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, who's truly freakish athlete, Baker Mayfield. So when you think about it, and he sounds like he isn't like this sounds crazy. He's not a run and shoot guy. He's not, he's got kind of a chameleon. He kind of adapts his offensive philosophy to the quarterback and the personnel. So maybe this is going to turn out. And I hear I think he's kind of a tough guy. He's a no nonsense. He's going to tell it out as he sees it. He's going to be demanding. We commit a lot of pre-snap fouls here at Cleveland, and some things were just, it makes you feel like there's no accountability, or I don't want to say coaching because I know these guys are coached well, but he might be a guy that's not going to tolerate that type of stuff. And so you know how it is. It kind of goes in football. Well, you have a players coach, and the players, kind of aren't as sharp as it. And then you go out and you get a hard ass. You get a Bill Parcells kind of guy. So he obviously has offensive expertise. He's an older coach. He's had varied experiences. So who knows? It might be a recipe for success. But as you all well know, you have to have a quarterback, and I don't think we have anybody in house right now that we can't say.
What do you mean? He's a Pro Bowler.
That was obviously that was the biggest rave here in Cleveland. One of the radio stations, they keep a running, the morning or the afternoon show, they keep like a running tally. I think they're up to 17 times that somebody's called in and said, well, Shadour's a Pro Bowler, so they put another notch in the belt. But so he's going to be out there I don't know. Just it goes to show you the NFL is a business, and I'm sure the marketability thing. I'm sure the NFL want. There's actually a conspiracy theory that the NFL office called up on day 3 and told the Browns, "You will take Sanders in the 5th round." And
Wow.
who knows? Because I think he's the highest selling rookie jersey. He might be 3rd or 4th of all players. So,
Right.
It's
not
it's
shocking.
Don't let anybody kid you. I mean, everybody loves to win, wants to win, but they also want to put money in the bank too. So there's a little bit of that going around. So I'm sure they called up and said, your guy's a Pro Bowler, and he's going to be out there playing flag football with guys. So it should be. At least I coached in the Pro Bowl when it was a legitimate game, and it
Yeah, I want to. That's exactly what I was going to ask you about, Kevin. You've seen this transition. You were on the coaching staff during the years that people really cared about the Pro Bowl. How do you feel about where things are at right now with the Pro Bowl and how seriously?
Well,
these
once again, I
players are
guess
taking
that all seriousness, all joking aside, you don't want to lose a player in a scenario like this. I remember I think it was the Patriots had a running back named Stevens who was a really, really good running back, and he was at the Pro Bowl and he was playing touch football on a beach and he blew out his Achilles tendon. And there are guys that get hurt. They get hurt, during these games. So I guess as far as player safety goes, if you're going to lose a guy, lose it in a meaningful game. And this is not a meaningful game in that respect. So you could tell the guys are such good athletes that they can play contact tackle football and don't go to the ground. And, all of a sudden receivers are backing off, running backs are backing off. They're not taking guys to the ground. So the quality of the game declined greatly. And truly, at some point, it was an embarrassment. So I think that probably this is now, I worry about the guys playing flag football. I think it was Myles Garrett who was pushing one of those sleds in those relays, and he hurt his hamstring pushing a sled. So, I mean, guys can still get jacked up even, because you know what, they are, alpha males, and if it's a tiddlywink match, they're going to go hard to win. So even though they have flag football, they have these jumping into pits of foam, they're going to go at it hard, but maybe there's just less of a chance for injury. So, and it sounds like it's entertaining. It's not what thank goodness, I participated in two bowls like that, Pro Bowls, and you won money. I mean, it wasn't a lot of money for the players. Certainly for me, for my family, it was a lot of money, and it was almost like, I think you got $30,000 if you won, and you got $15,000 if you lost. And I remember Coach Cowher was coaching the game, and we ran a fake. And of course, you're not supposed to do stuff like that, the etiquette of the game. So I got the special teams guy across the field wanting to punch me out at a dinner that night. But you know what? Hey, we made $30,000, so that's that's to me still is a lot of money. And my wife,
more than that for us.
It wasn't rat hole money. You couldn't hide that from your wife because she knew how much she got, so she could spend it. So, but again, Nate, to your point, I think it's probably they had to go in this direction because you don't want to lose a guy and get hurt. And it sounds like it's entertaining, and I think the players kind of like it. They get the acclaim of being a Pro Bowler, and I think they always liked it in Hawaii because that was always a cool spot to go to. But now, of course, they haven't decided a Super Bowl, so it's better for marketing purposes. So that's the way it went because it just wasn't a viable game anymore.
Right. I think I'm just most thankful that I got to witness a few of the good ones, at least. Like, it is what it is now. I enjoy it, but it's just not the same. Nor, like, is the game just as a feeling, I think, in terms of intensity.
And the other thing that's really cool about it is you got a chance to really put a personality with a name. Like, we're at the Pro Bowl, and Ed Reed's on our team. And, of course, you know who Ed Reed is. He's a Hall of Famer. And he couldn't have been more, hey, coach, what can I do? Hey, I can return punts for you. Let me do this. Let me do that. And, you kind of, when you're coaching at Pittsburgh, you really dislike Baltimore a lot. And you don't like Ed Reed. But I couldn't have been more taken back by what a great person he was. And there wasn't anything he didn't volunteer for. So, I mean, it really, you know, it enlightened you to the guys and some of the personalities, and you're coaching the kicking game, and you don't practice. You don't practice at all. The only guy that wanted a script that was ready to practice was Peyton Manning, and Peyton would come down at 7:30 in the morning and want a script. He wanted to know the plays that Wizard Hunt was putting in. But basically you show up and they give you 5 or 10 minutes of your time, and then they go golfing for the rest of the day. So now when you're coaching the kicking game, you're just hoping you have 11 on the field, and the players were phenomenal. We didn't have any. Tony Gonzalez was the only guy that was kind of a pain in the neck. Tony didn't want to do anything. We had Gates. Gates was there, and Gates was a rookie or a young guy. So Gates had to do everything. Tony did the return game, and Gates had to do the coverage game because you had to run more. So you found out about Tony Gonzalez, who was a nice guy, but he didn't want to do a darn thing, and he made Gates do everything. But the players we didn't have any problems relative to substitutions. They played hard. They volunteered. After a while, they would just say, "Hey, Spence, relax. We got this." And they did, you know. But when you go there, I'm up at night ready to throw up because I'm going to be on national television. We're only going to have 9 guys out there for a play. So anyhow, it was a great experience, and I got another great Super Bowl story, but I'll save it for you guys. I won't bore you with it because you're getting me all jacked up, and I'm talking way too fast right now.
Well, let's transition though then to your early career, starting off with just meeting Bill Belichick. I mean, that is just huge in itself, and I know you give a lot of credit to him. Just talk about meeting him, playing college lacrosse out of all things.
My freshman year, we had spring practice, and you're a freshman, you have to do spring practice. But then, you're kind of going into your sophomore year, and there's something unnatural about playing football during spring break. It didn't, and it's not like I was a big party guy, but everybody else is having a great time and good weather, and we're out playing football. So my buddy said to me, hey, a lot of my football guys were, multiple sport guys, and they said, hey, why don't you come out for lacrosse? And I'm thinking, I don't want to do that because we used to have the bulky pads. They were transitioning from wooden sticks to artificial sticks. And, I knew a little bit about it because I grew up in Long Island. Unfortunately, my family moved before I could actually have an opportunity to play. But I knew how to handle a stick, and I knew a little bit about the game. So long story short, I played lacrosse. And so I played my sophomore, junior, and senior year. I was very fortunate that, I had an aptitude for it and excelled. And I think that we played all the New England schools, and we played a conference called the NESCAC, which is the New England Small College Athletic Conference. And that's like the mini Ivy League schools, of which one of those was Wesleyan University. So we're getting ready to play Wesleyan, and our coach had a scouting report, and you would always go through immediately and say, you looked at the roster. And they had a lot of guys from Annapolis, Maryland. And I'm thinking, this isn't good because lacrosse was still geographically pocketed back then. It wasn't like it is today, where it's throughout the entire country, which is really cool. But when you knew you were playing somebody from Annapolis, they were going to be good players. And there was a lot of them there. And then they gave a little synopsis about each player. He's left-handed, he's right-handed. His best move is an inside roll. He's got this, he's got that. And they're talking about this one guy who had an odd spelling name. And they said, definitely not the best player on the team, but he is the best player because he runs the show. And the quote was, he is a coach on the field. And the guy's name was Belichick. So it was almost, even back then, the lacrosse coach was a soccer guy and took the team over so that they would have a soccer program. But Bill and his buddies, all from Annapolis, when they were there for 4 years, they ran the program. So they were really good. And so that's how I got a chance to meet Bill. And, I went back and I checked. We beat those guys. I'm dating you guys now because your parents probably weren't even born back then. But in 73 we won, and then 74 we lost. And then we had a bad team in 75, so we played them, and we lost them 5-2. But my goal was, as a defensive guy, was Belichick wasn't going to hurt us today. So I actually, and he will disagree vehemently with you that this did happen, but I'm telling you he's lying. It's kind of lacrosse-gate. It's not Spygate or, but anyway, he, I knocked him on the ground a couple of times, and, he was a midfielder, and I was we didn't really have long stick middies back then, but I was able to match up on him. And so that's how I got a chance to meet him. It was just this by the end of it was like just a respect thing. It was a competitor that you remembered, and he had really good teams, and he was an excellent player. Didn't say very much. What a shock that is, but he was a tremendous performer. And then I move on in my career, and Bill did the same, and we wound up crossing paths in Detroit. I was a high school coach, ironically there because I knew a little bit about lacrosse, and the AD was interested in growing the sport of lacrosse because he was a Long Island guy, coached at Wesleyan, and he wanted to be the godfather of lacrosse in the Midwest. So we were practicing lacrosse in a private school, Detroit Country Day School in Birmingham, Michigan. And this guy hired me, not so much because I knew anything about football. I knew something about lacrosse. So this guy's coming down the hill to practice, and he's got a lacrosse stick, and I'm going, it isn't like today where you can, walk around here, even in Northeast Ohio, and kids have lacrosse sticks because everybody plays now. But back then, nobody had dicks selling lacrosse sticks. I mean, nobody did that. So anyway, this guy comes down the field, and I'm looking at him and go, I know this guy. And sure enough, it was Bill Belichick. And Bill was coaching at that point. He started off with the Baltimore Colts. He was supposed to go to North Carolina State with Coach Holtz, and Coach Holtz went to the Jets, so Bill had nowhere to go. So he started out with he slept in the locker room at Baltimore, and he got his first job there. And then he got a job in Detroit. So he was a quality control coach, and Mr. Riley, our AD, and the lacrosse coach asked Bill, hey, it's your off season, would you come down and help? So he helped coach the team. So he and I, all of a sudden now, what was a competitive relationship then became a friendship. And here he is coaching in the NFL. I'm a high school coach, and I would go up to the Silverdome and visit with him, and was just, he was like a mad scientist. He had film everywhere, film clips on the wall. He was putting together, he just was so, when you look back on it, he was so ahead of his time. He was like, just a genius, a young genius of football, and it made me feel very inadequate because I thought I knew a lot. I didn't know anything, absolutely nothing. So that's how I met him, and then of course forged a relationship. And he goes his way, I go my way, and then eventually, get hooked up again in '91 when he became the head coach here in Cleveland. So it was just, but it all started with lacrosse. I mean, it had nothing to do with football. And many of the early jobs I got in my career were all based on an expertise in lacrosse. And football was like an afterthought, which used to tick me off, but at least it was getting my foot in the door for an interview because I knew something about lacrosse. So it really turned out to be a very beneficial thing.
Now, is there things that translate in lacrosse?
No
to
doubt. I think that because a lot of it, you have to have the skill of the stick, and you have to be able to go left and right. And, I didn't necessarily have that, but I was actually, believe it or not, a decent athlete. And obviously I get better every year I get older, but I actually could run. And so I had an aptitude. I had an aptitude for defense. So I think physicality, I think if you know a little bit about basketball and the basic tenets of basketball, give and go, moving without the ball, picks. There's a lot of sports like soccer, hockey, and basketball. There are these common themes that you can apply to the game of lacrosse. So I think if you're just a gym rat, you pick up lacrosse. It's just like playing pickup basketball with a stick. So I think there was a correlation, and of course there's the physicality where you could take, like football, they've cleaned that up where they've lessened the impactful hits that you used to be able to take a run at a guy and do some damage, but with concussion issues that have invaded that sport, as well as you guys know football for sure, they've cleaned that up. But there's still a physicality to the game. So if you're a physical guy and you're kind of a gym rat, it wasn't that hard to pick up. It's just like, hey, I'm going to guard. Hey Jack, I got you, and I own your rear end for the game, and that's just the way it was. So it made sense to me, and you really enjoyed the physicality of it because it was, you could take a shot at a guy and you just had to hit him from in front, couldn't cheap shot him. But as I said, they've legislated that the hitting out of the game of lacrosse as they have obviously with football.
Mm. Did you ever coach any lacrosse players? Like on the player side, is that translation also there? I mean, you made it as a coach, but did you ever coach any players? I think I saw a video of a Broncos guy, huge offensive lineman, and he was very adept with the stick. And I'm wondering, just hearing these translations.
I played when I was at Springfield. We had defensive tackle that was probably 6'2" to 6'4". He was a big guy, but he probably was 270, and he might have been the best lacrosse player on our team, defensively for sure, because he was just a hell of an athlete. He was gifted athletically, and he, there has to be some semblance of intelligence too. You have to have a feel for the game, and just teamwork and things. So there very definitely. It's amazing to see how you just give a stick to a guy, and before you know it, the guy. It's just there's a lot of guys that are incredibly gifted. Whether it's with a tennis racket, a golf club. I still marvel at football guys and hockey guys in particular. They turn out to be great golfers because of the eye-hand stuff. So I think, Nate, there's a correlation. If you're an athlete and you're coachable and you listen and do the things that athletes need to do to get better, I think there's definitely a great correlation. In fact, they said that sport grew here in the state of Ohio because the lacrosse people sold it to the football coaches that this is a great off-season training. So instead of lifting weights or running track, a lot of high schools added lacrosse to their repertoire. So now football players were playing lacrosse, and that opened up avenues for those guys. But I think the football guys were happy because they still could lift. They're running. There's change of direction. There's teamwork. There's discipline. So I really think that helped grew the game here in Ohio. And I'm sure you look at Texas, and who would ever think that Texas, Georgia, but I think it's because of the correlation with football and coaches wanting their guys to do, instead of playing baseball. I played baseball all through my high school career, and you guys probably played baseball too. And, you're out there shagging flies, BP, wasn't real, you think back, would have much...
Wasn't very good at it.
Well, as I said, I actually was a decent baseball player, and Jack, I've gotten better over the years as well. Like, I probably should have been an MLB, but obviously...
A couple dingers.
No, actually I was a leadoff hitter, and in my senior year I kind of put it together. So I actually, got on base and had... You know what the difference was, too, is that football... Even back in the day, that time period, weightlifting was kind of verboten. The coaches didn't want you to weightlift, but except for football coaches. So I obviously felt that not distinguished athletically or size and speed, getting stronger helped me have some measure of success. So, of course, I lifted, and I continued to lift in the offseason. And even in baseball coaches thought you're going to get muscle bound, you're going to lose your flexibility. That was all the things before the science of it was people opened up to it. But I'm convinced that I hit for power as a senior because I was a stronger athlete. I could generate power, bat speed, eye hand probably got better. But there's no doubt that off-season training of lifting was instrumental in me being a better baseball player. Because I don't know, I might have had double-digit home runs, but whoever, you don't have a leadoff hitter like that. You want to get hit, you want to take balls and strikes, you want to get on base and steal second and let the number 2, number 3 guy knock you in. But I was doing damage as a leadoff guy. So, but there's no doubt when I look back on it, it was weightlifting. It was a major clutch thing for me to do.
Kevin, I have a question. There's 2 folks in the NBA right now, actually your namesake, the Spencer brothers. They were elite in the lacrosse field. And then you also have your experience on the baseball side. I feel like both of us actually growing up got to experience a lot of different sports. So my question is lacrosse producing the best athletes? Or is baseball producing the best athletes? Or is it having a mix of everything that kind of makes you well-rounded once you decide to focus in on?
That's a great question because I think it's hard to say that baseball guys aren't great athletes. I think that I just marvel at just how athletic those guys are. But I honestly think that maybe I'm always probably going to lean towards lacrosse because of the actual physicality of the game, the running, the dexterity, the change of direction, the strategies. I think that. I went to the Division I playoffs. It was in Foxborough, and they actually are allowing the Division I women play their championship now. I'll tell you what, guys, the girls were incredibly impressive. They were all these tall, lean, and God almighty, could they run? It was just amazing. It's like I'm going over it. And the girls' game has changed radically where it's kind of in line with the men's game. And they've taken, there's still no contact per se. But, you know, the girls can change hands now. They've got the artificial sticks, and they're stronger. And I was just so taken, you know, because, I'm going to go watch the girls' game. I'm going, this is a ho-hummer. I'll tell you what, it might have been the best of all the championships games. And I'm not BSing you. These kids were really, really good. And they're like these all tall, pretty, but athletic girls. So I think that it's, to your point, I'm sorry, Nate, I got off on a tangent there. But I think that, I think that, how about the guy, there was a guy that was an All-American lacrosse player at Maryland, and he wound up in his senior year, and I can't think of the young man's name, he wound up playing for a Division II school as a quarterback because he was from metropolitan New York, and he was a high school quarterback. So he went to Maryland and was like, one of their highest thought of players. He played at Division II, won a national championship, and wound up being drafted, I think probably a third-day guy or a free agent, and played wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. And for the life of me, I can't think. And I think now he's an assistant coach back at Maryland. And I'll think of his name at some point. But it was just like, this guy not only got done with his eligibility, and he goes someplace and he goes back to being a quarterback and wins a national championship.
Is it Jared
That's exactly
Bernhardt?
Who that is. Jared Bernhardt. Exactly. And he had, he had a kid.
Shout out Google.
He had a kid brother at Maryland who was a heck of a player, and I think Jared's back there. Maryland. I don't think they won it. Well, did they win a national championship? I was at the damn game. I can't even remember. No, Notre Dame won again, but they were in the national championships. Their coach there is phenomenal, and Bernhardt, I think, that's a great call on your part. And but he was again like this 6'2", 6'3". He was an attackman, but so incredibly athletic, physical, and then he goes and he actually plays 1 or 2 years for the Falcons. I mean, and I want to say he was a returner. And definitely was a wide receiver and just a great athlete. So it's kind of like you're talking about the Spencer brothers or those guys. They just and they could pick up. They could play croquet and kill you. They just guys. Those guys. We all kind of think that we're halfway decent athletes, but some of these guys, God hit them in the head with a magic wand when they came here, and that's why you have Lawrence Taylor, for instance. Guys like that were just freakish athletes. It's amazing that because they're gifted, and sometimes been in the NFL for as long as I was, you actually become immune to that. God, these guys, even the big guys, it's amazing when you look at the defensive linemen now, and even the offensive linemen.
Just the speed I see from them working for SDSU football is so impressive.
Oh, Jack, you're exactly right.
The speed they have, the movement,
and that's at SDSU. And I remember one time I was down in Miami for something, and I went to a Miami Hurricane practice, and the guys were running the bags defensively to warm up. It was intimidating because they were so big and so athletic and so fast. It's just like sometimes when you get those guys, and because they're all comparable athletes, it kind of, you don't see the greatness of it. But when you go, even at San Diego State, they have some hellacious kids there, and they're just great athletes. And so in the height, weight, speed, the body fat is less. You just look at defensive linemen, like we have Shedeur Sanders might have been able to run away from people in Colorado, but you can't do that in the NFL. I mean, you can't retreat 30 yards. They're going to run your rear end down in a New York minute. So it's just a tribute to athletic, how the field of out of season training has just evolved to. I mean, crazy things about those chambers that guys sleep in, and the diet, and they say like LeBron, like James Harrison here locally said James used to spend over $1 million in training. LeBron spends an ungodly amount of money in training. So and that's where it's gone now. It's just back in the day, you just used to show up, throw a uniform on, and play, but that's not the way it is anymore.
So, Kevin, you've been surrounded by some of the most gifted athletes throughout your career at the elite level, but you've also assuredly seen some people at the savant level. I know working with Bill, that's the first name that comes to mind. Who are some of those other names that would be at that savant level, like there's truly a level of genius that that the normal brain can't comprehend with the way these guys are operating.
Yeah, no, it's really true. Like you can just tell that you're out of your league trying to talk to some of these guys, and because they process things so quickly, and they're kind of ahead of the game and great anticipation. And I know you guys will appreciate this. You know, Phillip Rivers might be that kind of guy. Now, you would never know that because, you know, what he used to say, God dang it, or God dang it, or, you know, he never took the Lord's name. He never, not once. But he always had a big smile on his face, and he's a big guy. And, you know, he just used to stroll into, he'd be there. I used to pride myself on getting to the office, you know, like 5:30. And I'd be in there to go down to get a cup of coffee, hang out by the equipment room. And he'd come strolling in at 5:30, and he'd have this floppy hat on, some beat-up pair of jeans, and sloppy jacket. And he had a briefcase. He probably still carries it. It must have been 25 years old. But when he would get into a meeting and start talking offensive football, like he used to have a meeting on Thursdays where all the offensive linemen and anybody pertinent to protection was in there, running backs, and Phillip ran the meeting. And he was like, you know, just, you know, was so, when he supposedly interviewed for the Bills head job, I didn't find that to be crazy. You know, I think that what you find out, I know I'm drifting again, but you're like, the head coach is a CEO now. Phillip probably would not have liked it. Maybe would have liked it better being an offensive coordinator, because as a coordinator, you are that football savant, or the head coach, you find yourself moving away from the X's and O's because of the incredible amount of things that come across your desk that aren't necessarily, they're football related, but not X's and O's. But getting back, Phillip was that kind of guy. You know, Troy Polamalu very quietly was that kind of guy. You know, that you only had to tell him something once. He probably knew it ahead of time. They all process information so quickly. And then not only that, they do it, and then it translates into movement, you know, or anticipation, or how in the hell did he know to go there? You know, it's just that they're just wired right. I mean, it's just, we all wish that we were gifted that way, but that's why they're special, because we're all not gifted that way. So those are guys that I'm trying to think of, other guys that were just, you know, just like incredibly smart people. But I thought Phillip would be kind of a contrast, because he's just as good-natured. You know, you think he's got like he's always sucking on a blade of grass or something, but he really, when you put him in a football deal, it's like, holy smokes, this guy's forgotten more than many people know.
It's always very satisfying seeing somebody really recognize their true calling, and now that he's in that coaching position, it's just so satisfying. The names that I think of, I'm not sure if you have any experience or memories about them, but Luke Kuechly and Andrew Luck, those are those savant level.
They said that
Kuechly
that
just pop into my head.
And you know, he wasn't this overbearing. You know, he wasn't like Dick Butkus or one of those big huge guys. But they said that he would watch film, and you hear players would say he would just recognize a formation, and he would be calling out plays before the plays were actually run, and they always said, well, how in the hell did he get there so fast? Because, well, he knew where you were going. And I can't remember who it was, a quarterback talking about it. They used to hate playing against him because he just was this UNIVAC computer. I mean, he studied film. Don't get me wrong, but he recognized things. There were little small tips that would click with him, and he knew, okay, they're going here, they're going there, or you would say something, he would know that. And he was ungodly at that, you know. And I only met Luck once or twice. I always was impressed with his, you know, he's kind of like Phillip, except he's a lot better athlete, I think, than Phillip. Phillip's not the most fastest athlete in the world, but Luck could really run. But he too was another, and that's a shame that his career was cut short because of injury. Because I think we only got the tip of the iceberg how great a player he was.
Well, going back to your first year in Cleveland, what were maybe some things you kind of learned right off the bat under Belichick? Maybe just getting to learn the scope of the NFL at that level.
Yeah, you know, it's funny how you kind of progress. Like I can remember, you know, I was a high school football coach in Detroit, and you reach this point where you think, yeah, I got this, and then you get to the NFL and you don't know a darn thing. And I think that the thing that I wrote this down was just accuracy. I'm looking for what I wrote down is just detail, because he was a very big detail guy. And we used to have, they called it a pad, and a pad was, let's say, 65 pieces of paper that were bound together, 8.5 by 11, and it would have a football diagram on it. So you were able to, and what you would do is diagram, like my job as a quality control guy, and I worked for the offenses, I would have to do a pad, which was I would have to say, oh hell, we're playing Houston, we're playing the Oilers, and that's probably a bad example because they were really tough to diagnose. But anyhow, because they were doing the run and shoot back in the day. But you would have to go through and diagram the play, and then you would actually and you would have to put in obviously the numbers, and you would put in the nomenclature that went along with that. But the thing that I learned with Bill is that, so you'd have to do 3 games and 3 pads, and that would have to be on his desk Thursday night. And he wasn't a big computer guy, so he would go through, and actually there were 2 plays, I'm wrong, there's 2 plays, so he would cut it the length, and then what he would do is take color-coded pens, and he would just make piles of things. So he was like the computer. So, but he would give you back the pad, and would have, this is a red pen, and he was the master of the red pen. And he would put the pad back on your desk at 5:30 in the morning, and he would circle the mistakes. Like for instance, you would draw a curl route, and he wanted to know the release, the guy, what was at the top of the route, what he came back, and you'd have to put 12, and you had the detail that, you would just blow through this thing, but it would take, honest to God, I'm not exaggerating, it might take 15, 20 minutes for one play.
Jeez.
And we had other stuff to do. It wasn't like all we did was pads. We were coaching our fannies off, and you would start working on a pad at 10 o'clock at night because your job was to service the assistant coaches. So you'd have to do all stuff to help them, and then you'd have your own work to do. And Phil Savage, who was obviously a famous scout and an administrator in football, he and I were GAs together, or quality control guys, and he had the defensive side, and I had the offensive side. And so that's what we did. So I learned detail and accuracy and the preciseness that he demanded, because that's just, you learned, if you're going to do a job, do it correctly. And we even had a great cornerback, Frank Minifield, who he would want a copy of the pad as well, and he'd come back at you, and if you didn't really at the top of the route distinguish that it was a double move or it was just a curl, it was an out, it was a post corner, I mean, Frank would go ballistic because he would study that stuff and watch the film. So the thing that I learned was just detail, and just the no nonsense about the business, about doing things. Like Bill's a tremendous personality, very bright, music. He knows music. He's very witty. But when he puts on that Full Metal Jacket during the season, it's all business. So you learn quickly. There's no BS. You got a job to do, and it's the detail of the job is that's probably the primary thing that I learned right away, was to be precise and don't BS. If you don't know, you got to tell them you don't know, but you better get an answer and you better do it right. So that's the thing I came away with, and he was ahead of his time. You could just tell. I went back and worked for him in 2019, and I sat back in the meeting room in New England, and I got my notebook and I'm taking notes, and I remember saying, now I get it. And this was how many years later, that when I sat in that meeting in 1991, I didn't know anything of Pumpter stuff. It didn't have any great relevance, or but when I went back in 19, it's like the circle was completed. I said, God dang it, now I understand what you were talking about. So it was really a PhD in football for sure.
Kevin, while we're on this topic, I got to bring up the current events. With Bill not being on the first, or not being a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
I feel like that is something that you have to have more valid feelings about than any of us schmoes. So I'm definitely
I just I reacted like vehemently. I sent him a text and told him what a bunch of BS and blah blah blah, and and he got back to me, and he was usually hey, thanks for your support. I really appreciate the fact that you thought of me, blah, blah, blah. He didn't allude to any, I'm sure he's not happy about it. And I've read a couple articles, guys, about, that it's kind of the whole choosing of the Hall of Fame group, it's kind of a tedious and maybe somewhat of a, not an accurate way in which they are doing the voting. When you the modern player, or now the aged, not aged player, but then the contributing. So they kind of throw these names in a hat. So it sounds like that there was kind of some BS, and then there was some. And let's be honest, there's some people that are jealous. There's some people that Bill spanked them big time with his teams, whether it was wherever he was.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people resented, Deflategate and Spygate and this other stuff. And, I've never commented on that. But I remember, I remember when I was in Indianapolis, Howard Mudd, who was a famous offensive football coach, he would have somebody, a scout, would go there and write down everything that the coaches did relative to signals. And then he would look at, okay, play one, he did this. He did this. And then he would look at the play. And so Howard knew at the end of it that by watching the coordinator, that's what they do. That's what they were doing defensively or offensively. So I guess it's supposed that New England took photos. Now, I can't confirm or deny, but I will deny. But suppose that they actually filmed those guys, and then you put the film to the. So, but I don't know that for a fact. But I think that they're, what's the old expression? If you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I think all the great ones are going to push the envelope to the very edge of the table if that's going to help them gain an edge to win a game. And I'm not condoning cheating. I'm not, but I just know that the great ones do it. And I think a lot more people did it than will admit. Unfortunately, Bill's situation was exposed. And ironically, It was Eric Mangini who was one of his assistant coaches. And I coached Eric in college. And, I think that's a relationship that'll never come back together for sure. And it's unfortunate because they're two really good friends, but I have to kind of separate that stuff. But I really think that, there's some people, a general manager from a team that I work for that I think he wasn't real happy with, what the Patriots did to his team. And I think that this is maybe their way of, making him pay the price. And now, for Bill Belichick to not be in, oh my God in heaven, he's won 6, he's won 8 as a 2 additionally as a, he really has set the bar. So, I mean, he's up there with the great names, the Lombardis and what have you. So the Shulas of the world. I mean, Bill Walsh. For him, and now he'll get in, but I don't know if that's just someone thinking that's a slap in his face. And I don't know. I think, come on, let's be real.
Well,
I mean, there's a lot of how many cheaters and bad people are in Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
that we know about.
Well,
but I wasn't real happy about it.
To you, what outside of all of Bill's accolades and awards and Lombardis, right? What made him a Hall of Famer to you specifically?
I just think the thoroughness of his preparation, the importance that he placed on practice. They always said that you'll ask any player that played in New England that practices were harder, more tedious, more stressful than the game. The games were easy, and Bill was a big fundamentals and skills and demanded fundamentals and demanded. Practice wasn't a grab bag thing. I mean, no, I'm not saying you have to manage. I think probably what Bill learned from his Cleveland experiences that you have to. It was brutal back in those days practicing football, 2-a-days, the heat, the hitting, and I think he learned that you really have to take care of the guys. So he probably managed the physicality of practices, but the mental demands. I mean, he would go into a room and you had to know, you would have to know, okay, where did Jack Powers go to high school? What sports did he play? And he made the guys get to know their teammates, and guys would be given projects and would have to present information to the other guys. I think it was the thoroughness of preparation, the importance of practice execution. He always said that practice execution was game day reality. So if you made practice that way, and Honest to God, if somebody jumped off sides, the entire team, Brady included, would run laps.
Wow.
And then the coaches would run laps. And he just wasn't going to put up with, he would always say, bad football wins before winning. I'm going to say this wrong. Bad football wins before winning football can win. So it was always about, we need to eliminate bad football. And we're never going to win until and how do you do that? You do it via your mental preparation, your physical preparation, classroom preparation. You take it from the classroom to the practice field to the game field. So I think that's why I think he's Hall of Fame. He was a master teacher, demanded greatly. He used to get after number 12. Number 12 sat in the front of the room in the middle, and when Bill would put up, plays of practice, and he'd say something, well, if the effing quarterback had put the ball here instead of here, that ball wouldn't have been potentially intercepted or knocked down. And he was, number 12 was sitting right there in front of him, and maybe at some point that got tough on Tom. I don't know, but I think Tom will tell you that, I wouldn't have done what I did if it wasn't for Bill, and I think Bill would say I wouldn't have done what I did if it wasn't for Tom. But Bill didn't. Bill, didn't. There were no favorites. He got after your rear end, and I think again it gets back to just the preparation. The guys were just the little details, the teaching points. Average players became great players because of that.
At the
and
bar
great
higher.
players were like, yeah, and it was it'd be raining like hell, 10 degrees outside, and he'd just say, all right, you got to get your SHIT stuff on. We're going outside. I mean, because he said, and he used to take balls and put them in buckets of water, spray it with silicone, and then they would have to do ball handling drills because he wanted you to know what it was like. If we're going to be in rain or wind or whatever or cold, he prepared the guys accordingly. So you ask any of those guys, games are easy. They were easy. Practice was hell, but games are easy.
It makes me curious.
Sorry, that was a very, very long-winded answer, guys.
No,
got me going again.
It's all good.
It's got my brain thinking about how when Powers and I were kids, we had Belichick and Brady, and then as we started to grow up, we have Reed and Mahomes. And now that era is kind of coming to a close, it's going to be interesting to see who the next pairing is going to be, if anybody's going to be able to replicate that. So I'm curious.
Yeah,
I'm curious.
Yeah, no, you're right. And Shanahan's a guy. I just but he doesn't. And I love Brock Purdy, but Shanahan's another one of those guys. That and maybe McVay is kind of showing it to you because of what he's doing presently. With his quarterback. But that's a good point. But the thing that those guys has done is this sustained success. Yeah. All those years of the winning, and to your point that obviously Mahomes and Reed, and Andy Reid might eventually be the best ever. And I love Bill. Don't get me wrong, but I totally respect what Andy Reid's done. But Shanahan's impressive. Obviously McVay is impressive. But you wonder, is this Johnson guy at Chicago and his quarterback, is he going to? Because you look what he did with that young man in 1 year's time, and he's still a little bit of a wild hair, but he, it's you're right. But those were like, that's like Lombardi and Starr. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, now you guys got to go into your Google and look that up. But that's who those guys were, Johnny Unitas and Shula. It's really cool, and you hope that Josh Allen gets a mentor because he's. And time, the clock's ticking on him, athletically and everything. But he's such a great player. God Almighty, he's a great player. And really has changed his body and changed the way he plays quarterback. So I hope that he can get somebody, maybe what's his name, staying there, Brady, so maybe that'll help him. I don't know. It's fun watching those guys.
Absolutely. Your early career experiences definitely manifested in some success as your career progressed, and I would love to talk about that a little bit. If we could start with 2003, or with the Steelers, the year that earned you Special Teams Coach of the Year. That's some incredible. That's an incredible thing to put on your resume. So I want to hear a bit about that season. Maybe any specific plays or stories that you have.
Yeah, I just think that I went back and I looked at that season when I thought you might ask about that, and we wound up. That was my first year at Pittsburgh. We were 10-5-1, but we started off 1-3. At some point, the kicking game, we beat Cincinnati. I had Antoine Randall as my returner, kickoff and punt, and he kind of broke that game open with a 99-yard return for a touchdown. We wound up beating the Browns in a playoff game, and then we lost to Tennessee. And that was the year that Tennessee had the Music City Miracle, I believe. And Nate, to answer your question, I think that you just people, when you're in the NFL, they always say, well, what do you look for in a special teams player? And it always used to crack me up and go, well, what I want to see is a guy that's going to play varsity football for us here. He's going to be part of our 22. And then while he is earning his stripes, he's going to help us in the kicking game. So I wrote down some names, the guys that we always had guys like Chidi Iuma was a free agent from Cal and played. He was a corner, but he was always the fifth corner. But he was a great special teams player. And, we had Sean Morey, for instance, who's a guy who's, believe it or not, he played his collegiate football at Brown University and had more career catches than Jerry Rice. And here's a guy from Brown, and he's no way Jerry Rice. But we also had Chris Hope, who was a rookie, but Chris Hope wound up starting for us. We had James Harrison, who had been cut by us, cut by Baltimore, came back to us. And now James Harrison was just a backup linebacker. Brett Kiesel wound up being a great defensive lineman there. I talked about Randall. I had Josh Miller, who was a hell of a punter. I had Scott Peterson was. So I think it was you kind of blessed with really, really good football players that aren't part of the 22 yet. Not everybody can be part of the 22. So, and then you have guys that just, the reason why they're there is that they have, they know if I excel in the kicking game. The one year it wasn't part of this group, but I had this kid named Polamalu, and he was drafted in the first round, number 12. But Troy was kind of his own worst enemy because he was so, I don't know. This is before he let his hair fly. He used to keep his hair in a ponytail. But he was his own worst enemy. He always, I think he felt the pressure of being a safety taken number 12, I think it was, which was incredibly high for a safety. And then, the pressure to start, and he didn't cut it loose and just play, but he was our best special teams player. How could you not have succeeded? He's a Hall of Famer, for God's sakes, So I just was blessed, I think, with, first of all, you have a head coach that cared about the kicking game, and in that case was Bill Cowher, who made his living as a special teams player when he was a Cleveland Brown. And then, so he had an appreciation for it, and I think the fact that he believed in it, not unlike Coach Belichick, who believes in it. And then you're just blessed with players. So I think that I was just blessed, and I think I always joke with people and say, look, my job was to make sure they're on the bus and they got to the game on time. And then, but they were professional football players. They studied it. They didn't think it was beneath them to play in the kicking game. And I had guys, that continue wanting to play even when they were starters. But you got to, it's like you got to take it easy on them because they're playing 65, 70 snaps a game. But I just was fortunate. You're only as good as the players and the assistant coaches and head coaches you're around. So, and I think I knew a little bit about it. But let's be honest, guys. You don't win if you don't have players. It starts with players. You can't be a great offensive team unless you have a great quarterback, and it's the most important position of football. And it's the same in the kicking game. You have to have guys that are good players, and guys more important that care and they're professional. And you're always going to get knuckleheads. You don't need a-holes. That's different than a knucklehead. Knuckleheads are knuckleheads, but the other way. You have to, and I've been blessed that you're around organizations where the players, they take care of that. They take care of that stuff, and coaches aren't as involved. If you don't have a great locker room, you're not going to be successful. If you had a great locker room, there's a great culture, you're going to win. And I've been fortunate. I've been around a lot of places like that.
Well, Kevin, when you're doing
trying to think of any,
when you're doing special teams prep, what are you looking for when you're studying an opponent?
I think. Well, you're always looking at schemes. Okay, what's their whether their return scheme, their coverage team. I think you're always looking for an evaluation of their personnel, like who's their alpha dog, who's their guy that, you always, Coach Belichick always would say, what player is going to wreck a game? And we have to find a way to not let that guy wreck the game. I mean, Bill was always very, very good at, talking about we need to take care of this guy. We can't let Jim Kelly throw the ball down. I think they said, I'm blanking on the name of the great running back the Bills had. And Bill's thing was we need to take care of Kelly. Let this other guy run 100 yards, but we need to take care of Kelly. So I think when you're studying film, you're looking about who is a potential game wrecker, who do we have to potentially double team or get a proper matchup where we're going to put our best player on their best player. And you're always looking what schemes that we run that could take advantage of some things that you see, and whether it's in protection where you're looking at block kicks or trying to run the football via your return game. And so you're always looking for ways like that you're always looking at strengths, weaknesses, and I think a heavy emphasis on personnel. You just don't want to let guys wreck the game. You have to eliminate those guys. And you want to, conversely, who are your game wreckers? Like James Harrison, for instance, who, I mean, we used to take outside linebackers, like Joey Porter and, James Harrison, and we put them on the edge and have them protect and rush punts. I mean, who could block a punt better than guys that get the quarterback for a living? And so now you have a running back or a safety that's got to take on James Harrison. I mean, it's a mismatch. So you can't, so you're always looking, how do we take our guys and beat their guys, So I think that's what you look at in film. And then I think you also have to be careful. These guys are also working on offense, defense. I think you have to have a plan. You can't have they always say it's not so much what I know, it's what the guys know. So you don't want to flood them with so much stuff, a multitude of things. You want to do a few things that do it extremely well and be cognizant of the other things that they have on their plate offensively and defensively. So like I said, nobody cares if I'm a genius. Well, I'm a genius is when players play hard and play fast. So and the way you do that is don't overcomplicate it. And don't make it so verbose that they can't handle it. So I think that's all part of it too. You don't have a lot of time in the kicking game. You have to be very conscientious of the use of your time. O&D deserves that time because they're going to play 60, 65, 70 snaps. I might only get 20, 25. So you got to be smart and don't tax the guys, mentally. So it slows them. They don't play fast. So that's what you do when you look at film.
Would you say that your philosophy as a coach changed over the course of your career?
I think I think it did. I think that I think you have to. I think probably the greatest thing I learned is that not all guys learn the same way. You have to somehow or another. Some guys are auditory guys that they hear it and they process it, or they're film guys, they see it, and then you have guys that they physically have to, say, for instance, walk through it. So you can't say to guys like, you're going to kill them in a film session, and they can't process that. That's not how they learn well. But how they learn is take them out there and walk them through it. I think you're getting some of those 3D things now where I know we had this in New England, and my job was to take the rookies up there, and the rookies would be standing there, and they're on the screen would be plays and players, and so that's a way to try and simulate game type conditions. So I think some of that IT is so amazing now. It wasn't like that when I started, but I think probably the thing you learn is how do guys learn. And I'll tell you the other thing, guys. It sounds a little bit goofy, is that you got to remember these guys they're human beings. They're fathers. They're sons. They have the same problems that we have, and maybe even more so because of their notoriety and the money. And so I think that when you can show a player, unless, like I said, you're going to have knuckleheads, and you almost probably need knuckleheads. You don't need, the other word I used before, a-holes. But I think that if you show a guy, even at the professional level, that you genuinely care about them as a person, and hey, what's up at home? How's the wife? What's up with, hey, I heard your daughter's ill. What's going on? I think that guys, they're going to, I could be all wrong about this. I don't think I am. But I think they're going to give you more because they know you care. And they know that it's And it's a crappy business, believe me. It's a hard business, and it's a really crappy business at times, and that's hard to shelter guys from some of that. But I think if they know you care and you're genuine, and you show that you love them, I honestly think that they're going to play harder for you. They're going to give you everything they got, because they just sense that, yeah, he's my coach, but he really does. I think he really does care about me as a person. And I don't know. I might be all crazy about that, but I still think they're human beings. We all think they're supermen, but they're not. They're alpha males, and they're freak athletically, but they have problems like we have. And I think you just have to, and it's probably even tougher nowadays with the social media and some of the things that you guys have to deal with, as young people. So I think those are things that's all part of it too. And I guess I've learned that along the way, is the guys learn differently, so you better expose them to different ways. And I think they got to know you care. You got to, make them laugh, make them cry, put your arm around them, that kind of thing. And that's a great part about coaching. It's all about relationships.
I mean, I always remember the players' coaches I had. I don't think about the coaches that were all about, winning all the time, personally. So it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and you got to, sometimes you can't take yourself too serious. I used to tell the guys stories about my kids, or and crazy stuff, and try and make them laugh a little bit, And it takes a little bit. You go in there and you're all. No, I'm not saying you go in there and have a BS session, but I mean, you got to get your work done. You got so many minutes to get it done. But you're right. I think you think back on your career. You think about the thing that you miss the most when you don't have it anymore is the relationship. It's the locker room. It's the competition. It's the good times, the bad times. I always felt sorry for people that weren't athletes. I just think not everybody's meant to be an athlete, but it's the greatest classroom in all of school, and I think that to not have that involvement, I always like I'll say to people, "Hey, what are you going to watch the game at 1 o'clock?" And I go, "No." What do you mean you're not watching? It's hard for me to relate to that, but it really is cool, and when you quote unquote get retired, that's what you miss. You really do miss that, and sometimes you're always doing this too. You're always looking at your watch, because your life has always been regulated by. You'd be amazed how much work you get done in 5 minutes. You guys know you work hard. You know how it is.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Oh, yeah. Kevin, you've reached the top of the mountain in your illustrious career, but I want to know personally what your biggest triumph is. Was it a quieter moment, or was it finally reaching that ultimate goal? Well,
there's no doubt that there's so many great athletes and coaches that give so much to the game, and they never get to that. Bill Parcells always said I think John Madden said it, there's only one team that's happy, and that's who's going to play next Sunday, because everyone wants to get there. So no doubt having an opportunity to play in 2 Super Bowls and winning one and unfortunately losing one, that probably was the chance to be a champion and be that guy at the top of the hill was probably a huge moment. It was at the end of the Super Bowl game. We were up 21-10, and when you're a special team, like now at this point in the game, the guys have got their hats on like this, or their hats are on backwards, because you know what? We're up 21-10, and there's a minute to go. And when you're a special teams coach, you don't relax until it's 0-0-0. So I'm thinking, okay, if they go down and score here, I got to get the hands team ready. So you're always trying to anticipate situational football. And you really, I want to just want to start crying, laughing, whatever. But the game's not over yet, And I remember Clint Krewalt, who was one of our backup linebackers and was a great special teams player, came up to me, put his arm around me, he said, "Spence, today you're a champion." And that was kind of cool. And then I still was waiting for it to be 0-0-0, and I didn't have to put the hands team out there because Hasselbeck, I think, threw a pick, and the game was over for us. But it was, I guess, I'd be a liar to say that probably wasn't a great moment. I think just my small time in Pittsburgh was pretty special, because that's a traditional NFL town, and it's really, really important to the people there. I mean, when all the steel mills were crashing down and people were out of work, the thing that kept them going was the Steelers, and and the Pirates, and so that's a community that really cares a lot about their football. So that was a lot of fun. So and you're just blessed, I mean, like I said, you just right place, right time, and you face a fork in the road and you go to the left instead of the right, and that turned out to be the right road, and God had a plan for me. Thank God it worked out. So I guess that's probably, when I look back on it, that's probably a great moment. I think you asked something that's kind of corny. I think probably most proud of is that you still get referred to as coach. Mm-hmm. That I got guys that I coached in college, and they don't call me Kevin or Spence. It's coach, and I think that's probably the ultimate compliment. That like I have one of the kids I coached at Ithaca. He was a hell of a lacrosse player from the Rochester area, and he and I were texting back and forth during the last Bills game because he's a big time Bills fan, and he's a coach. I can't believe this happened, coach. I can't believe, but they still call you that, And I wouldn't be offended if he called me by my first name, but it is kind of a endearment, I guess. But I think it's also I don't know. You know that you did something to help somebody and
made a lasting impact,
and it was more than winning. Yeah, it is. It's like it's more than winning. I guess it's you want men to be men. You want men to be good men. You want them to be good people, good fathers, and don't take the easy way. And there's so many valuable lessons through sports that in athletic accomplishment, even in athletic failure. That you just want these guys to be good people and productive people. And when you see them climbing the mountain, it just makes you feel good that you had a little something to do with it. So, sorry, Nate, went off on a tangent again.
That's what we're here for.
Well, so Kevin, sorry, Nate, go ahead.
I just want to ask you, after reaching the top of the mountain, then you go through this change in your career. I want to ask you, and I'm sure Jack was on the same page, what was that transition like to Arizona? I think it's just in doing some research about it, talking to you about it earlier, it's a very unique transition that not a lot of coaches experience, not a lot of people experience. I want to hear what that was like for you.
Yeah, that was we win the Super Bowl and it was the 05 season, 06 Super Bowl.
Super Bowl XL.
That was So I got to tell you this quick because this is really cool. I think we were 7-5. We just got beat by the Bengals, 38-31. The kicking game was horrible that day. So now we aren't going to win the division, and literally we have to win 4 games in a row. We beat Chicago, Minnesota. We beat the Browns. We clobbered those guys, and then we beat Detroit. But those were like 4 playoff games because we know we couldn't lose. We had to win, and then I think it was the 07 Giants did it. We were the first team that was a wild card team. So we had playoff wins. We beat Cincinnati. We beat Indy at Indy. We beat Denver at Denver, and then we won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So the next year now, we get off to an awful start. We start 2-6, then we go 6-2. We win one more game. We're in the playoffs again. But it really was the playoff hangover. I think we just we lost our edge. So anyhow, Coach Coward decides to not retire, just step down. So now we're all like, well, we thought we were going to be able to stay there with Russ Grimm. That didn't work out, or even Wisenhunt. Coach Tomlin came in, and that became his 19-year run. So now we go to Arizona, and Arizona was terrible, and they wasn't very good football. They had Denny Green there, and Denny Green was a great coach. They had really, really good players. So we go out there, and Coach Wisenhunt was our head coach, and after our second season, yeah, I think we 9-7, but we won the division. It's a typical, you think the AFC South is bad. Back then the AFC West was bad. So we win the division, and we go out there and we beat Atlanta, we beat Carolina at home, and then ironically we beat Philadelphia in the championship game, and we got clobbered by those guys. We got embarrassed by New England. I mean, we're just like. We weren't a great team, but we caught lightning in a bottle. We had Larry Fitzgerald, Kurt Warner. We had some just great players. And my wife will tell you the reason why we won is that we won with Denny Green's guys, just like John Gruden won with Coach Dungy's guys at Tampa Bay. So anyway, so now we're going to a Super Bowl, and who are we playing? We're playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, and so it was just
weird emotions.
I was incredibly resent. Yeah, it was. I don't think I've ever fully appreciated Mike Tomlin's greatness because I still resent the fact that he beat us with our guys, and it was really tough because you love those guys. Now I'm playing against 43 and I'm playing against number 7, and we had some really good players, and Kurt just did a marvelous job, and Larry was phenomenal, and Anquan Bolden. We just had really good football players, and we had a good defense, and so we go up, and there's 2:47 left, and this is probably a stupid thing I said to Wizen. I said, you scored too fast. Because you got to score when you can score. I mean, that's dumb. Let's wait till there's no time on the clock. And I'm thinking Ben's either going to throw it to us, or he's going to take him right down the field and beat us. And sure enough, that's what he did. He hit Santonio Holmes in the corner. And I have to admit, even with today's technology, back then it wasn't as accurate. Nobody thought he got his feet in, but he did. So then we lose to those guys. So now the ticker tape stuff's coming down, and it's black and gold, and you can't even find the other coach to say. You just walk off to the locker room. It was just this, you had this feeling 2 years before that of this exultation. You have your kids on the field with you. My kids are doing snow angels in the confetti, and what a great moment. And now you're walking off and you lost it. I'm sitting in the bus and I see the Steeler guys walking by and they're smoking cigars and they got the bathrobes on. So it was just really, it was really hard because you really love those guys. They were such a great team, great players. You felt like you were at an alumni weekend or something. It was brutal, But they, got to tip their hats. They beat us, and Ben beat us. I was praying he would throw it to us, and we had a couple of miscues defensively, and and they took advantage of it and beat us. We couldn't stop them, so that was tough. It was really, and then of course, the next year I think we went 8-8, and then eventually we fell out of favor and we got our fannies fired and we were out of there. Then on our way to San Diego, but it was just, I'm looking at it right now. That's this corner of my basement. That's the Steelers stuff is over there, and the Arizona Cardinals stuff is over there. And so it's you come down here and you have some good reminders and some not so good reminders. But we really took a very hapless organization, I think, and took them to a Super Bowl, which is kind of cool. And we still lost to the Buggers.
That Super Bowl specifically is burned in my mind because of the iconic Madden cover. I want to ask, I know in those locker rooms there's some people playing video games, playing ping pong. I hear about it a little bit. What's some of those locker room memories? Were guys playing Madden? What do you recall?
No, I don't know if guys, everybody, is more musically orientated, so everybody's got their own music and they got their earbuds now. So I don't, and now probably the tail end of my career, everybody's on their cell phone. I remember though that Edgerrin James, when he came out to Arizona, because we had him at Indy, but Edgerrin had a locker that had a TV set. He had his own locker, but he had a TV set, and he had video games, and he would always be playing video games in there, and guys would be in there playing with him. Fitzgerald would be in there. So Edgerrin did have some type of video format system that they would play games, and he'd be going one-on-one with somebody. So I do remember that now that you mention it. But I've never been around anything where guys had like recreational areas. I know I visited the University of Alabama, and those guys have this game room that's just unbelievable. It's like you're paying to go to this game room. It was unbelievable, and guys are down there playing their video games and they got their motorcycle things and they're racing and stuff. It's like I think some of those Power 4 schools have some big time locker rooms that guys do things, but I don't remember that so much in the NFL. I know supposedly Baltimore this year they took all the ping pong tables out because they were going through that stretch. I think the fact that Lamar didn't play like 4 or 5 games might have had something to do with that. But
it was ping pong. Trust me, it was ping pong.
Well, what they had. What was big when I was at San Diego was they had that mini basketball, and the guys after practice and in between games, Danny Woodhead was one of the masters of that game, and Phillip was that. And they would be in there and they'd be playing dominoes, which is a big board, like a board game, and cards. And they're always playing the basketball all the time. And Phillip's in there, God dog it, and somebody would. So it's funny because they're driving, they make money, they have big time cars, and they have children, and then you see them being children. I guess that's why they, it's kind of a neat thing that there's, like I said, they're good knuckleheads.
Well, talk a little bit. You just mentioned San Diego. Talk about a little bit of your time in San Diego as we're filming right now from SD.
Yeah, it was. We were at Arizona, and Bruce Arians took over, and Bruce wouldn't let me out of my contract, and I knew I was going to stay there, but that's the bad thing. They can hang on to your contract and won't let you talk to anybody. But I was already talking to Mike McCoy at San Diego, so we were able to go out there, and that was kind of a neat thing. That probably of all the places I've been, we probably lived in San Diego the longest. That's where my boys went to high school, and that was good. I mean, you're playing. They had some good teams, good players. Philip Rivers. I'm blanking. He's back. Who's the great wide receiver? Played at Cal. He's back. He left. Went to Keenan Allen. I mean, we had Keenan when Keenan was a rookie. I mean, that's how old I've gotten now. And Keenan's like long in the tooth right now. But but having Philip, that was very unique, and we had some good teams and went to the playoffs. But we ran into the Denver Broncos, when Manning was there, so we couldn't get around those guys. So, but we had good teams, good defense, really good players. Like some of the names that we were talking about, like Philip was always. You'd be up in your office, and I was really lucky. My office overlooked the practice field, and on a Tuesday, which is the players' day off, Philip would have maybe at that point his 8 children out there running around, and he's playing football with his kids, and some of the other guys had their players had their children there, and so that was a neat place. And like Danny came because Danny was a New England guy, and I looked this up. Danny was so unique. He's in the College Football Hall of Fame. He won 2 years in a row the Harlan Hill Award in 06 and 07, which is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy for Division II. And Danny also, in his career there, was a 3-time All-American. And he looked like, 12 years old facially, and he was like the really small running back. And I looked at, when we talked about him, I looked up, he's played 12 years in the NFL. I mean, that's an incredible accomplishment. Yeah. And really, really good player. He really helped me a lot in the kicking game, where I leaned on him because he came from New England. So he brought some of the New England ideas, some of the things that they were doing that Coach Belichick did. And, Danny, I can remember one time he and I were having a philosophical disagreement. And he could have probably, bowed up on me, but he was so darn respectful, and he let me have my way, albeit it was probably wrong. And then he came by and said, "Hey, Spence, I need to talk to you." And we sat down and talked about it. And the next day I go, "Hey, guys, Danny and I had this conversation. You know what, I really thought about it. I think what Danny was saying, I think we need to do it this way." But he could have been, that guy, and he wasn't. He had enough respect and being a gentleman, but still being a team player and wanted to win. And the idea that he had was very helpful. I was just being stubborn, probably. So I remember Danny was just a great guy. And we talked about Rich Orenberger, and he was another New England guy. And he was with us. I think Rich played for 6 years, and he was just one of those. He was a very, very intelligent player.
Came
He's
out
a very
of
smart
Penn
guy.
State.
Yeah, and he just in New England he had those concussion issues. When we had him, he had a really, really bad back, but he was smart, tough, and he just was a really smart ass, I guess is the best way to put it. But he just is a smart dude, and I know he's doing a lot with in the media now, and that makes sense because he's really knowledgeable. And there's one other guy that comes to mind that you guys, and I think he's back at San Diego coaching. It's Nick Hartwick was their center, and Nick had this great career at Purdue. And Nick was a wrestler, and he went there as a wrestler. And then I think the football coaches came up to him and said, "Hey, Nick, would you try being an offensive center?" And Nick was one of those guys. We have a guy like that here in Cleveland, Joe Thomas. They have like basketball bodies, but they have to work their fannies off to get bigger. And Nick was one of those guys that was constantly, pounding calories because it was hard for him to keep weight on it. And we have a field goal meeting, and I tried to get Nick, because he was kind of banged up, and I didn't want him to be on Field Goal Pro anymore, because I just didn't want to take a risk of him banging his shoulder and then we'd lose him in the game. Mm-hmm. So I would always say, look, I don't want you in the meeting, go. So one day he walks in the meeting, buck naked, and the only thing he's got on is a towel. And he comes in, and and I can't do it because I'm sitting down, but he's standing, and he puts his leg up on a chair. So obviously the towel didn't conceal the things that was probably meant to conceal. And he had the entire room in an uproar. I mean, because he goes, he's doing this, he's stroking his chin, Spence, I think you got to look out for this guy. And he's trying to be this super serious professor. And he's buck naked, and he's always got on as a towel. But he and Philip are like this. Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as protection and right, wrong, it was just, talk about professional football players. I mean, those guys were really, really professional football players, and it was a lot of fun there. And I eventually got let go there. Got let go during the season, and I just say to people, I just didn't. I sound like Kevin Stefanski here in Cleveland would come into his press conferences, and he says, we got to play better, we got to coach better, and I got to coach better. And what I'll tell you guys, I needed to be better, and I'll just leave it at that. I have my own personal feelings, but I've maintained a relationship with Mike McCoy. I've seen Mike do things. I complimented Mike. He's had help. I think he kind of was an interim coach there at Jacksonville. He was an interim coach most recently at Tennessee. He's a really, really good football coach, and didn't end maybe the way I wanted it to end, but it is what it is. You get hired, and eventually you're going to get fired, and you just gotta hope that you can rebound from it. And there's no profit in being, I do this thing. I speak to kids, and one of the messages that I tell them is, don't burn bridges. I think we're so quick to alienate people and be critical of people, and we want to fight with people. And I know I don't want to sound like a knucklehead, but there's no profit in burning bridges. I mean, if a guy's a bad guy, he's a bad guy, and you just let it go. But there's no sense going around and spreading this or that. And I think that Mike McCoy and I have a pretty good relationship, and we still talk. And so, and I can even tell you another story where a guy took my place for a short period of time at Oakland, and I didn't like it. And I remember I came home and told my wife, I said, that's it. I'll be damned. I'm not going to do a damn thing to help this guy. And my wife sat me down and kind of, said, hey, look, you're a professional football coach. You go in there and do everything you can for him. Long story short, this guy, Rusty Tillman, he goes into Indianapolis after he leaves Oakland and calls me up and say, hey, look, we got a special teams opening here. I'm recommending you to Coach Moore to maybe come. So, if I burn that bridge with Rusty Tillman, and like I said, my wife advised me not to be like that. He never would have called me and recommended me. So, why do stuff like that? You never know if you treat somebody decently and treat them as a man and don't be a jerk, that it could, and again, this is different than, sometimes you got to cut your losses because the guy's a bad guy. But so in that case, you don't burn bridges. You never know how that, I got my job at Pittsburgh because of my relationship with Ken Wisenhunt, because I kind of befriended him. So, if you treat people decently and you're not a phony about it, you're just trying to be a decent human being, because there are guys that do that, shaking hands with it because I think they're trying to make contacts and stuff. You never know, where that's going to lead you. And so that's another lesson I kind of learned in this crazy profession.
Coach, if I may interject real quick, I'd like to try to share my screen. I'm going to see if I can do this real quick. Is this what Nick Hardwick was doing? Kind of groundskeeper Willie, like he had the towel on, and you get to see upstairs on Broadway.
Yes, that's exactly what he did. Exactly what he did. Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
All right.
What was that movie? What was that movie that Sharon Stone did the same thing in? Right?
Oh yeah.
Remember that there was a movie she was in with.
Off the top of my head. No, I'm a.
But that's a. but that's exactly what he did. But he there was like two entrances to the meeting room. There was like a ground level, and if you went through this door, that took you right down the hallway where the offensive line guys would hang out. And then there was the door in the back. So I'm up in front doing the field goal meeting, and he comes right through this door because he was probably had treatment, and he was in watching film in the offensive line room, and he walked in, and like I said, he's got nothing but a towel on, and all the guys are like rolling because he's just a great man, wicked funny, but a hell of a football player. But he comes in like he's being really serious, and how can you take serious this big dude? And he's got nothing but a towel on. It's like, Nick, what's the deal? And then he drops the towel and hugs me. I mean, you just can't make that stuff up, But it's, I'm not going to be ticked off about it because believe me. The meeting was over after that.
That's a player's coach there. That's a player's coach.
Player's coach, for real.
Once that group was lost, I just let them go. There was no bringing that back. Like I just say, all right, we'll take care of this out on the practice field, guys. And another guy that we had there, I just thought of the Nick Novak was a hell of a kicker that we had there, and Mike Seifried was our punter. So I was very blessed that I had two really, really good specialists at San Diego that were good guys, and Mike Schneck it wasn't Mike Schneck. I'm trying to think of Mike, the long snapper, who was a hell of a golfer too. But really, really good guys there, even though it might not have ended the way you wanted them. But always good relationships.
Well, you had brought up Rich Orenberger, and I work with him with San Diego Sports 760. I think I've told you before, and I brought you up one time during a football game. I think it was halftime. Like, hey, by chance, do you know Kevin Spencer? Because I just got to know you. It's like, oh my gosh, how do you know Kevin? And he's like, I have a story about Kevin. I'm not sure if you recall this, but you took him out on the field and had him kick field goals and slowly backed him up. And he said he kept nailing them. I don't know how true that is, but
well, we're having. I'm sure we're having kicking problems.
I think that's what he told
Rich and Rich, I do. When you let me know that, I said, I'll be damned. I do remember that. Well, Rich is like. You know how Rich is.
Rich is a big guy. He's
no, he's really big, and he's also athletic. So fine. I said, all right, Orenberg, I've had it. Let's go on the field. So, and I can't remember if he was thinking. I don't recall if he was doing it the Ludoto Groza or he was doing it soccer style. But I'll be darned. You line him up at your extra point. I go, and then now he's yakking. He's just doing this. I can't shut him up. So then I back him up again, and now I don't know. He's hitting from 45. Because you forget these are the guys that they'll go out and shoot a scratch game of golf, or they'll beat you in pool, they'll whip your fanny, and they're just gifted. But you see, Rich had no humility. I mean, he was incredibly confident. So and I respected him because I know. And Nick Hartwick was the same way. Those guys play hurt at the end of their careers, and never took the easy way out. I mean, absolutely refused. I mean, you really had to take their helmet away from those guys. And Rich was the same way, and Nick was as well. That they just they were battlers, just the old school. That's the way they did things. And Rich, unfortunately, I think his career was cut short because of the back.
Yeah.
And as well as he had neck issues too. And Nick had things where he hit his shoulder and just would have. Lose all feeling in his arm, and then couldn't snap, and then they'd fix it, and he'd go back out again and get whacked, and but they were courageous guys, but two comics. Those two should have worked together. That must have been a start if they ever did that. Make sure you tell Rich I said, hey, he was a great. I enjoyed him a lot, and he and Danny brought that thing with them, kind of the New England way, because of Belichick, and I'm not so sure that we had that kind of culture, at San Diego like what Bill had. But those guys made our locker room better because of that experience that they had there. And they didn't come in and, put it in anybody's face. But I think that they helped change the culture. I don't know if it changed it or just made it some moments, because you have young guys like, Keenan was a knucklehead when he was a rookie. I mean, they're all knuckleheads when they're rookies, but Danny probably sat him down and talked to him, and same with Rich, in the offense. Well, you don't have to really coach up offensive line. Those guys are they're lunch pail guys, they're hard hat guys anyhow, but they those guys helped in that respect, no doubt, because of the experience they had in New England.
That's got me thinking, Coach. You've been a part of some great teams, of course. What is the strongest culture that you've been a part of out of all these teams?
Well, I can probably, no doubt, the Pittsburgh Steelers was a very strong culture, and that was, again, managed by the locker room. Jerome Bettis was, but we had some, Aaron Smith, names of guys that you wouldn't necessarily know that, I remember when Ben came in, Ben was really still very great athlete, great quarterback, but still an immature kid. And I can remember, Joey Porter, ripping his rear end in front of the team. I'm saying I'm getting a low battery here. How much longer are we going to go here? I don't want to lose you guys.
We won't go until we tell how much you got.
It's got the red line. I could run up and get my power cord, but I don't want to do that. If you don't mind, I'll do it.
Yeah, we don't. We don't mind. We'll
we got
probably
a few
be
more
like
questions for you.
I was afraid that was going to happen, but
no, you're good. Oh, look at this backdrop though.
Oh, that's it. That's the Steeler stuff. That's the Steeler wall right back there.
That is awesome.
How's this? All right?
That is great.
Yeah, that's well. See, when I come down the stairs, I don't know if you can see all the way in that far corner. That's a Sports Illustrated cover, and every day I come down, and I make the sign of the cross and wish, say, God bless you, Troy. Very religious young man. One of the things I don't know if it's noteworthy. I'll just. We were talking about culture. I know we were talking about that, and I talked about the Steelers. But I tell you what, the New England thing is real. About Belichick. I remember I was out there, and it was amazing to be there because they actually, and this was 19 when things started going like this a little bit. Yeah, I think they won the Super Bowl in 18.
Yeah,
was that
I think that's right.
The Ram one? Was that the Rams, or it wasn't the Atlanta one? But
no.
I remember grabbing Teddy Bruschi, and because I was always interested about that whole. Wherever Bill went, Bill brought, even when we were at Cleveland, he brought his soldiers. He brought guys from the New York Giants because, he's trying to change the culture at Cleveland. So, Ernest Biner he brought in. Ernest Biner, he brought in Pepper Johnson, and these are all guys that won championships in New York because what he was hoping is and Parcells would do that too. Wherever Parcells went, he would bring his guys.
Yeah.
And so what that does, it helps. It makes it easier for him to change the culture, because those guys we talked about before, the locker room runs the show. And so I remember saying to Bruschi, I said, "How does Bill do it?" And he said to me, he said, "Coach," he said, "Bill doesn't do it. We do it." And they had such a strong locker room, of guys that they weren't going to tolerate. They put up with some guys, but they were telling me stories that they would go to Bill and say, "Cut him. He's not one of us. We gave him a chance." So I think it's
wow.
To get back to it. So that was, and I would say Pittsburgh was like that too. We just had guys that cared. I mean, the old guys would get after the young guys. Like Coach Cowher was very, I don't want to say he was a player's coach, but he took care of the players. I mean, it wasn't a heavy physical type thing. But Coach would get ticked, and if we had a bad practice, he would say, "We're going to put the pads on." And of course, the older players are going, "Whoa, we don't want the pads on now." So they would get those young guys to say, "Look, you knuckleheads, Bill takes care of us, and that's why we're fresh on Sunday." Mm-hmm. But he'll change now because he's not going to tolerate, poor practice behavior, and Bill was the same way. So the players run that. So it's just. I know it starts at the top, but I think you just have to have, quality people, and we definitely had that in Pittsburgh for sure. And I think the tradition there was very helpful, but there's no doubt the senior leadership was phenomenal. I mean, you got Joey Porter ripping Ben Roethlisberger, in front of the entire team. And this is the quarterback, and Ben deserved to get his rear end ripped. But, and Ben probably did it, when he grew. I mean, we talk about he was just fresh out of college. I mean, he's, this big strapping guy, but he didn't know if it was pumped or stuffed, and those guys set him straight. And I know that they definitely do that at New England now. And I think probably Vrabel's got that thing going right now. So those are probably, I'm trying to think, Indianapolis was strong because Peyton Manning was a very strong leader.
Of course.
So I think that he turned that around. I mean, Peyton used to, Marvin Harrison, like when the offense is not going, they take turns, OD. So the offensive starters normally go over and sit down and relax. And when Peyton got there, he would take the offensive starters when the defense was up, and he'd be down there running routes, red zone routes, doing this. And Marvin's like, whoa, wait a second now. This is my time off. But that's what made those guys so good. That's what made Peyton so good. Like, I think I heard a story on once. I was listening to the radio the other day that practice was going. I was there, but I don't remember this happening. But I'm sure it did happen. Where Peyton just lost it and said, "All right, let's go back to the top." And we started practice all over again. And now it didn't come from the coach; it came from Peyton. So those are you really. I don't care how much talent you have, but if you don't have a culture, you don't have an attitude, you don't have a work ethic. It's people holding other people accountable, and that's as you guys know, that's hard nowadays. Yeah. I mean, you have kids that everybody text messages, they email, they're on their phones, but nobody has face-to-face conversations anymore.
Yeah.
But those that do and hold people accountable, and people aren't offended by it, I just you can win a lot of football games with that more so than talent. That's for sure. So those are 2 players. The Steelers, very definitely. In New England, my exposure there, and probably Indianapolis because of Peyton was strong, and there were other good players there as well. So and if you're great players, are those guys? Like Ben initially wasn't that guy because he was just too young and a little bit full of himself. But when you're great players, are those great people? I mean, it really makes coaching so much easier. You just worry about the X's and O's and the injuries. Yeah, but it's no different, and even in your occupations, it's all about people, and if people are rowing the boat in the same direction, you got a chance to be successful. So, and I say that because I'm not trying to capitalize on the University of Minnesota, because when you're at Iowa, you don't say row the boat because they think that those guys are kind of corny over there. That's why I got my Iowa hat on.
Well, that's what you've done a little bit post-retirement, correct? Is you were helping out the Hawkeyes on the special team side?
Yeah, well, and there's a chance that what happened is that in 2016, that was my last year with San Diego. I coached my high school, I coached my son's team, St. Augustine in San Diego, and also coached lacrosse there too, because both my boys played football and lacrosse. And then I in 17 and 18, Coach Ferentz, because we coached together in Cleveland and Bill's first staff, like our first year was 91, and Kurt came from the University of Maine in 92, but he had the Iowa background. So anyhow, their special teams coach was also tight end coach, and it was his first year. Coach LeVar Woods, who's a really good player there, played in the league 7 or 8 years. So anyways, his first year doing the kicking game. So I went out there and assisted him. I just helped because he was still coaching tight ends, and he's part of that tight end U. Those kids that came out of Iowa. He's George Kittle was one of his guys. What's his name at Laporta. They also at Minnesota.
So many dudes.
He's got long hair now. They had a great bunch of tight ends. Anyhow, so I would run the specialist meetings, and he ran the special teams meeting, and then I helped on the field. So I did that in 17 and 18, and I actually lived out there and did that. So it was like being a GA again. But it was such a University of Iowa is just college football, the Big Ten. We beat Ohio State, beat Urban Meyer. We had a lot of good wins. And, that was huge, especially beating Urban Meyer. That was a lot of fun because a lot of our friends are Ohio State people, and I remember they were at a bar somewhere, and they said, "What do you think?" And I go, "I don't know. I was worried."
Yeah.
You watch his team, Ohio State, warming up. They looked like a pro team. They were just huge, and we wound up beating them. I can't remember the name of the quarterback, but he threw it to us too many times, and we played well on defense. And, yeah. Then 19, I was at New England, and then I couldn't stay at New England in 20 because of the COVID. So then they had an abbreviated Big Ten season. So I did film work 20 and 21 for Iowa. So I studied film and sent in reports, and then I would go in during the bye week, and coach friends would bring me down and go to the bowl games. I mean, we played a bowl game in Yankee Stadium and played down in Tampa. So it was kind of a cool deal. And then 22, helped out a buddy of mine at a small college in upstate New York. And 23 and 24, I coached at Ignatius with the local Catholic school here. And this year I bagged it. We didn't win a lot of games at high school, and it was kind of, you're still putting in a lot of time, and they've always been a great high school program, just falling on hard times right now. And then this year it looks like I'm going back to Iowa because their special teams coach, Coach Woods, is moving on to Michigan State. And so they now have a brand new special teams coach. So Coach Friends called me up and said, "Hey, are you still interested in helping out?" So I think I'm probably going to go there. I'm going there next week to meet the coaches and just get started, and probably be there for spring practice, and we'll see how far it goes. So. And
you would just kind of advise them again, and
just
help out.
Just help out. I think that this coach is a defensive guy, and I think he's got some familiarity in the kicking game, and I think Coach Ferentz was pretty emphatic about we're going to kind of keep the system the same. So I'm pretty familiar with the system that Coach Woods taught. So I'm just going in to help where I can, and they have that. I don't know if they had this kid, blanking on his first name, Weegan, who I think played at the Shrine Bowl, and he was a great returner. But we got to replace the returner, new punter, new kicker. So we're going to have our hands full there. And I'm waiting for the Browns to call me, but because they just hired the coach, so I might be waiting for a while. So anyway, that's what I'm up to right now. So I just do this film work that I've been doing, and then I've just been studying Iowa film to get familiar with their past season and go out there and help out. So that's what I'm doing right now.
I love it. And I got to ask you while we have you, are you envisioning more therapy Mondays or victory Mondays for the Browns season?
Well, I think that if you ask, I don't know, I'm kind of, it was kind of a tough deal here because they went out and interviewed these Sean McVay cronies, really smart kids. One kid was 30 years old, the other guy's 35. He played at Illinois, he's an Iowa State kid, and really, really smart kids. But I think that they felt like they needed to bring them in as head coaching people. And Jimmy Schwartz was our defensive coordinator, and Jimmy was here. And I coached with Jimmy at Cleveland with Coach Belichick's first year there. And so there was the real smart kid, Shieldhouse, he's kind of the pass game coordinator for the Rams. And but again, he's one of these whiz kids. I think, like I said, if you have a cup of coffee with Sean McVay, they want to talk to you because everybody wants to think that they could get the next Sean McVay. So, and these kids are all really, really smart, and they've been, like Chris Shula's out there. He's a defensive coordinator, and I know Chris from the San Diego days. He was there as a GA, and Chris will probably be a head coach. He and McVay played college football at Miami of Ohio together. So anyhow, so they wound up, and Todd Monken, who's the offensive coordinator for the Ravens, was part of this. And he had 2 interviews. Jimmy Schwartz had 2 interviews, and this Shieldhouse kid, the kid from the Rams, had 2 interviews. And yesterday named Monken, and so everybody was like, holy smokes, what the heck happened? Well, I think that they were a little worried about the young guy being a head coach because he's not even calling plays. He's not a coordinator for the Rams. And then I think they were saying that the GM wanted the young guy, the owner wanted Jimmy Schwartz because Jimmy was a head coach. He was actually there when they drafted Stafford in Detroit. So, and then they gave it to this guy Todd Monken, who, and to answer your question, Nate or guys, is that initially I was thinking they're still getting a lot of therapy Mondays. they're going to have to. It's just that from a personnel standpoint, they have to rebuild the offensive line. We really don't have a plethora of quality receivers. Jerry Jeudy's our best receiver, and I'm of the opinion he's not a number one. He's a 2. But we have the remnants of what was a really good defense. And the quarterback situation is, I don't think we have the starting quarterback in the building. You have Sanders, you have, obviously, we still have Gabriel's here, and they also have, I'm blanking on his name, Watson.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen. And our draft choice, because we won at the end of the year, I think we're 6th. There's not going to be a viable quarterback, I think. Now they're saying 27 is going to be the better quarterback class. Now, they said that this time last year about this year.
They say that every year, huh?
But the what's his name is going to go to the Raiders probably. He really showed
Mendoza.
well. Mendoza, yeah, and I don't even know. How do you know he's going to be
Seems
the
like
next
he's
Josh
under
Allen?
seems like he's under a pretty disciplined Kurt Signetti, and maybe that kind of translates over for his gameplay. But
yeah, he during at the end of the game he dropped an F-bomb. He's a very religious kid, and he dropped an F-bomb on national television. This guy Todd Monken is kind of an interesting guy because he's won at Georgia. He actually turned a programmer at Southern Miss. He's significant other than this past season with Lamar Jackson. He was with Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay when he put up the big numbers. So it sounds like he's, kind of, I don't want to say he's a quarterback guru, but I think he just seems to be able to shape an offense based upon the quarterback. But we don't. The quarterback is critical for us. We don't have, a Justin Herbert. That's why. People, why did Harbaugh go there? Well, hell, he went there for the quarterback. And why do you think that Mike Vrabel went to New England? And, well, it's the quarterback. May did a great job this year, and we don't have that guy. So, but I'm kind of uplifted because it sounds like this guy Monken's kind of like I hate using the word genius, but he's had a lot of success offensively, but we have major issues relative to the offensive line and the receiving core. And,
pieces.
And we're kind of strapped in the cap because of the Watson deal. So we're going to need. You're not going to be able to get all these guys via the draft. We got to hit free agency. Right. So they're going to have to work some magicians, but we definitely have some personnel issues. So the Therapy Mondays might be more. And you feel bad for the city of Cleveland hasn't had a winning situation since '99.
Yeah.
They've gone through 40-plus quarterbacks. I don't know how many coaches, and they had a good year the year that season we were talking about before. I think Butch Davis was the coach, and they had good personnel, and we beat them in a playoff game. But they should have won. They were blitzing the hell out of us, and they called off the dogs to get conservative. And Tommy Maddox was our quarterback, and Tommy lit it up that day. So anyhow. That's where we're at here in Cleveland. So,
progresses.
It's funny. You have Therapy Monday, but by the time Friday rolls around, you're jacked up and ready to go. You want to win a game. So, and I hope they can straighten it out because this town is just thirsting for success in football. And they used to have it back in the '80s and a little bit in the '90s, but not since '99 since they've been back in town.
Yeah, thirsting for success is something San Diegans can definitely relate to, and that resonates with me.
Yeah, well, baseball is killing you guys. I mean, my son still lives out there, so I know that baseball is a tough deal. And you got I know that the coach that you had, he resigned. Who's the new coach of baseball now?
It's Craig Stammen, who.
Young
guy,
the pitcher
was a former Padre, coming from the bullpen,
yes,
and
that's
has those relationships with the guys. It'll be really interesting to see if he can command the respect, because
I met him a few times in Coronado. He lived in Coronado, and he's got this. One day I drive up, and there's like 2 gas stations on the island of Coronado, and usually the gas is like $2 more than if you go over the bridge. So anyway, Stamen's filling up his truck, and I'm in there doing something, and I introduce myself, and he looks like a damn linebacker. He's a big guy. And I'm saying it must be nice that you can fill up your car here, and I know you make some money as a baseball guy, but you're filling up your truck. It must be like 25 gallons. He goes, like hell. I put $2 in and go over the bridge and get it on the other side. So, but but I tell you what, I really liked him as a player. Doesn't he have the notoriety that he come in as a reliever and gave up like 3 or 4 home runs? Like bing,
yeah,
bing, bing.
I have some PTSD with Craig Stammen, but actually hearing that Coronado gas station story has given me some hope. Like there's some brains there. There's some strategy.
No, he's. I tell you what, I just thought. I remember they used to bring him in all scenarios, and I wasn't part of what you went through with the home run deal, but I always thought he was kind of a bulldog. So hopefully that translates. And I remember Manny lives in Coronado. We used to see Manny. My son used to help out at the Coronado golf course, and Manny would come in and just. He said, "Dad, he looks like a linebacker. He's huge, and he hits. He strikes the ball big time."
Something we want to ask is like, what's something you wish you knew before going into NFL coaching?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I never. It's funny. Like my college roommate, he used to keep manuals. He used to go to clinics, and he used to do all these things as an undergrad. And I guess when I look back on it now, I was more interested. I wanted to play. I didn't want to coach. And obviously I wasn't good enough, but that's what I wanted to do. So I think, when I look back on it now, I wish I probably. My buddy used to go to. He was a college junior and used to go to like a football clinic and take notes. And he had these manuals because he wanted to be a football coach. He wanted to be a track guy, but probably. I don't know. It's funny, guys. I probably don't. There's nothing that I think, man, I wish I knew that then. I just I loved sports. I wanted to play sports. Was disappointed, that I couldn't play beyond college. And honest to God, I mean, I wasn't good enough. But then the next best thing was coaching. So I said, well, if I can't play, at least I could be near it. So I don't know if there's anything that I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd done this. I think that things just fell kind of blessed. Things kind of fell the right way. The whole. I actually had some injuries in football, and, my college football career wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. And so that's probably was the appeal, like, to get involved athletically again. And that's why I fell into lacrosse. And that turned out to be this amazing path. I mean, if I didn't get hurt or I still was with football, but I just thought I was going to be better. But I never would have played lacrosse. And then, you know the story. I mean, it opened up all these different avenues. So I think, I think the biggest thing I recommend to young people that want to get into it, and this probably sounds crazy because I think that, if you want to do it, you can't be laissez-faire about it. I always ask guys the minute they say, hey, I want to coach. I go, okay, that's cool. Okay, now, are you in a serious relationship? And I don't say that because it's just that it's not an easy lifestyle when you first start out. And if you are, or I say, do you have a lot of bills? Are you kind of like strapped to a job to pay bills? Like you really, when you get into coaching, you're not going to make a lot of money initially. You got to know some people and you got to be fortunate. And I think it's a tough lifestyle on a wife because you got to put your time in. I think you want to be good at anything. You got to put time in. You got to put time in intelligently. I mean, there are guys that I've been around coaches that they stay in the office, keep the lights on, and they're on the phone, or they're there till 2 a.m. But they're not doing a productive thing after 10 p.m. But I think that your family, or if you're in a relationship, that's going to pay a price because I think whoever you're with, if it's serious, they have to understand that if you're going to do this thing right, you're probably not going to make a lot of money, and you're going to have to put time in, because you're going to have to totally dedicate yourself to it. But you guys, or whatever, in your callings in life, I'm sure you're busting your fannies and you're putting time in. It's just that you have to probably be. And I've been blessed. My first marriage didn't work out so well, and because my first wife would always say to me, "When are you going to get a real job?" Like she never looked upon coaching. It's kind of like this fantasy, and you can tell that went backwards. But my present wife is just she's wicked independent. She loves sports, and she's never ever gotten on my rear end about, well, what do you mean I've been in offices where a phone call goes over 5:30 and it's a coach's wife. Well, when are you coming home? And I've got these meetings, and then the next week on the same day at the same time, phone rings. When are you coming home? That's, you're never going to be good at what you're doing if you have that kind of pressure. I don't think you should be an idiot. Like I think that when you have some downtime, you have to give back to your family. But I think for a young guy, you're going to have to, and you're also you have to learn. Maybe you might have to take 2 steps backwards to go forwards. Like I was, and I'm not saying this is the right thing to do, but I'm out at Detroit Country Day School, and I'll tell you guys, I was making a lot of money. In 1979, I was making $17,000 a year, and that was a lot of money, honest to God. But then I went to as they called it a GA, but I was a part-time coach for Cornell University, and for $1,500. So I told my wife at the time, I said, well, I'm going to Cornell because I want to coach college football. And then I wound up making extra money, coaching college lacrosse there because they had a national championship program. But then I bartended, substitute taught, because you got to do all these crazy things to make ends meet. And then sometimes you're going to have to maybe take a step backwards to go forwards. And I guess the other thing that I always talk to young guys about, and I always tell my sons this, and I think you guys are probably grinders. I think you got to grind. Mm-hmm. Because if you 2 guys grind, you're going to separate yourself from other people. Like, and I know Jack, all the stuff that you do, and Nate, I don't know you as well, but I'm sure you guys are grinding. You're putting in 100%. Time right now. Talking to some freaking old guy in Cleveland, Ohio. But I think because when I was growing up, I think guys still grinded, because that's the way it was. But I don't think that's like that anymore. And I'm not trying to put down your generation, but you can separate yourself by grinding. If you, and that's intelligent grinding, but you're not afraid to turn the page, to take the next step, to maybe go to some place to get information. And because you can't be if you want to be good at anything in life, you can't be a 9-to-5 guy, I don't think. And you have to be intelligent. Like everyone says, do you golf? I go, no, I don't. I'm not very good at it. Well, all my coaching friends, when in the NFL in the off season, it's kind of a banker's hours. It's like 8 to 5. So the guys are always golfing. Well, I have a wife at home with 2 little guys. I'm not trying to do this, pat myself on the back, but I just felt that would have been selfish of me to spend, because you know how it is. You play 18, that's 4 or 5 hours, and then you can have some beers and hang out, And then she's been home, being really a single parent for during the football season, and then so I'm going to go golfing. I mean, it just, I think I could have had a chance to be a decent golfer, but it just didn't seem like the right thing to do. So I think you have to, when you have a chance to be a good spouse or a good boyfriend or whatever, you can't be selfish. But I think when you're trying to build your career, you probably have to be a little bit selfish if you want to be successful. So that's the thing I think I would recommend to guys that, you learned a lot from people that aren't very good, but you don't want to make a habit of that. I've learned a lot from coaches that weren't necessarily good coaches, and you say, well, if I get that shot, I'm not going to handle that this way. You better hope that you align yourself with good people, and you're going to learn from good people, because those are more valuable lessons. And like I said, we're all very fortunate, I guess, if we get around, we're with good people. And I look back at everybody I've been with, and even some of the sketchy situations, like when I was with the Raiders, that was kind of sketchy because Mr. Davis was kind of he wasn't sketchy, he just was very, very Mr. Davis, you know, and just but he's a football guy, but there was a lot of things that you probably shouldn't ought to do the way he did it, but you learn from that. You go, if I'm in that situation, I'm not going to do it that way. So those are, I guess, some of the things, guys, I would recommend. I don't know if I would have done anything different. I've been fortunate. I'm not saying it fell in my lap, but I took that left-hand turn instead of the right-hand turn. But so when I talk to kids, I just say, don't be afraid to, don't burn bridges, work harder than the other guy, and little things like that. What's it? There's something you can look it up. There's 10 things that you do that you can become successful that take no talent.
Yeah.
And I tell kids, print that out, put it on your bathroom mirror. Every time you go in the bathroom, you look in the mirror. That's who I want to be today. And really, you don't have to be. Now, if you want to play linebacker in the NFL, you want to probably be 6'4", 225 and run 4.4. But you can still be a great coach, and you don't need to be 6'4" and run 4.45 or whatever. You just can outwork, out talent, do the right thing, be on time. I can get on my guys' rear ends all the time about being. If you're not there, I'm kind of like Coach Coughlin. If you're not there 10 minutes early, you're late.
Nate and I know that one
Michael
well.
Strahan.
Nate and I know that one very well.
Michael Strahan hated Coach Coughlin because Coach Coughlin said we have a 10 o'clock meeting, but if you're not there at 9:55, you're late. And Strahan just hated him, wanted him fired. And then at the end, when Strahan won the Super Bowl, he loved Coach Coughlin because he said, the older you get, the smarter my dad. The older I get, the smarter my dad becomes. And then that's kind of like what Michael Strahan learned about Coach Coughlin, And then so you guys know, you hopefully you're around people that are not knuckleheads, but they're going to make you, do things the right way. So I don't know. A long-winded answer, guys.
No, you're good.
That's what I think.
Really
it's amazing.
That's what it takes.
Yeah.
That's what it takes, I think. And
a lot of that has really resonated with me. Embracing the ups and downs on the path, and these days, like there seems to be very few linear paths to have your dreams or your goals come true. So really leaning into that and doing what it takes to get better is what I've taken away, and also who you surround yourself with, of course, and having the support of your friends and your partners. It actually reminds me, we've been seeing the ring. We see the ring.
Yeah.
I want to ask about the Super Bowl pendant. I didn't know that was a thing. And is that in your wife's possession?
Well, yes, it is. Yep. Yeah. The Rooney family was very, very nice. And they actually bought a pendant for all the wives. But then Mrs. Wisenhunt and my wife, this is like the ring. I'm sorry.
Look at that.
So they actually got the real. They actually got the real deal, and they put it on a pendant. So that's, my wife wears that. I only wear it. I only wear it on Sunday. But we had a coach, Dick Hoke, who was a long time. He played at Penn State, played many years as a running back for the Steelers, and coached with the Steelers as a running back coach many years. And I think his health is kind of failing, but I think he was part of the four. I don't know if you can see over there somewhere in the 70s when they won everything. And I'll show you the wall when we get done here. But and then he won some as a coach. So I mean, he's probably got, I don't know how many rings. 4 plus the 6. Probably got 10 rings. And he would always wear a ring, and I go, Coach, why do you wear the ring? He says, you know what? And he would always wear a different one, but he says, I worked really hard for that, and I'm going to wear it. I'm not going to keep it in a safe deposit box. And so, now that I live in Cleveland, I certainly can't walk around wearing this, but they get a little upset because they hate the Steelers. But so I just wear it on Sundays. It's just the way a day, Sunday, that's game day, and it's a church day, and I think it's
a special
it just
day,
reminds
special
me,
day in your career.
Yeah. It reminds me that because sometimes you kind of when you're not in the thick of it, you kind of every once in a while you run in, like you guys have been very good for my ego today, but some days you kind of you're just like a regular guy. I don't think you walk around town and act like a jerk, but when you put the ring on, it kind of reminds you that you were successful. You won something. You also helped people win something. So it's just a nice reminder that, because sometimes you beat yourself up. Yeah, you're this, you're that. I'm not getting this done, I'm not getting that done. But when you put it on, it's like you just, not everybody has one of these damn things, and believe me, I'm very blessed. But it's it's a good reminder. And I'll tell you what now, when I used to wear it on vacation at Hilton Head, and amazing how many free beers you get when you have a Super Bowl right now.
Well, you should have been wearing it when I was bartending for you, and
No,
Free beer.
Jack was really cool. We hit it off right away. My wife loves him because my younger son's named Jack, so we were
and
all
I had the
we're all
privilege
about
of
Jack
meeting
people.
Jack as well. So that was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, he knew that I was doing this with you guys. But yeah, no, that I wasn't going to wear it. I probably should have. Next time if I ever meet you there again, Jack, I'll make sure I bring my ring with me.
100%.
But this is the one. This is the one actually that Jerome Bettis designed this,
Wow.
and they call this one for the thumb because they had the original 4 in the 70s. So this was the 5th ring. So they called it one for the thumb. So that's like whenever you give this ring to people, and you say, take a picture of it, you always tell them they got to put it on their thumb
Makes
because
sense.
that's it.
Super
And then of course they got the 6th one. So and we won't talk about that one.
Yeah, we can let you off on that.
Never happened. We don't even recall.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We just this past season we celebrated the 20th anniversary of that team, and so the Steelers brought us all back. It was amazing. It was most of the guys. Troy wasn't there because Troy was coaching high school football. His son, ironically, goes to the school that my sons went to. But anyway, it was like going back in time. It's like we never had. Now everybody's bodies changed, and but it was really cool to be back, to be around the Steeler organization. It just really, really good people, and they took care of my family, and the Rooney family was like really, really, really good people. But to see the players again, it was really
That's
neat.
special.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I think that's all we have for you. I think you told us a lot, and we really appreciate that.
Kevin,
It was so funny too. Before
Well-
we did a phone call with you, of course, before this, and I have on this piece of paper in front of me the word Bismarck because you said that's the word we should use when you talk too much.
You
You
know
didn't
what?
use it
Because
once.
I just know that that I just have a habit of that. I just yak. You got stories. I mean, I got to tell you this one last story.
No, we love the stories.
Okay, this is we in 2004 we went 15-1. Ben started in week 2, and we ran the table, and we won. We beat New England, and they were 17-0. We beat them. We beat Philly,
And that was
and then
against
we wound up
Belichick
playing.
when you beat him.
Yes.
Sure, that felt
And
good.
the first time we beat them, they had guys hurt, so they didn't have some of their weapons. We played them in the AFC Championship game, and Ben threw a pick 6 to Ty Law, and Brady had Branch was healthy. So we got whipped pretty good. We hosted the AFC Championship game. So nonetheless, we get to go to the Pro Bowl that we talked about before. So we go to Hawaii, and my sons get to go, and they have a blast. They're playing with John Lynch's kids, and they met so many. They had a blast, and they're hanging. Peyton Manning comes down with a book, and he's going to go by the pool and read the book. And Timmy and Jack remember Peyton from when we were at Indy. So Peyton comes on, Peyton. And I'm going, guys, hey, you leave Peyton alone. And he says, hey, Coach, you mind if I take the boys to the bar? So he brings them to the bar and buys them a Coke. And then, it's just like my guys are like spoiled freaking rotten. So the following year, we have the year 7-5. We win the games. We're in the AFC Championship. The game starts out a little shaky against Denver. And so my kids are fired up because they know if we don't go, we're going to the Pro Bowl. So we wind up winning, and we're playing the Super Bowl in Detroit, Michigan. And it's cold, and it snows. So my sons were so put out. Really, Dad? Really, Detroit?
Why didn't you lose?
Because they knew, exactly. They were watching the game on TV, and I think, Ben almost throws a pick 6 to, they had the great corner that they had there, and I'm blanking on, he's a Hall of Famer. And anyway, I think, Hines knocks it out of his hands, but we wind up ripping them and win the game, going to the Super Bowl. My kids are ticked because they are not going to be able to go back to Hawaii. True story.
And you're just like,
I mean,
but
but they had a good.
where's my
they,
love?
They had a great time, but the day of the game, it was the Saturday before the Super Bowl. It snows, And now they're all bent out of shape. You know, they're going down to the NFL experience, and it's snowing out, it's cold, but hey, we won a Super Bowl, and I think they enjoyed that. They get to go on the field and everything. But talk about snotty-nosed brats. They were really ticked. They couldn't go.
They're like, we want to go to the bar
Hawaii
with
and hang. Yes.
That is
So anyhow,
awesome.
that's a story that I thought of when we were talking about the Pro Bowl. Is that we did go back another time. Like Sean Murray won Pro Bowl, and it's really cool that no, actually it was Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson was a Pro Bowler, and part of the deal is they're supposed to bring your coach. So they brought Patrick paid for the DB coach, and Patrick had 5 or 6 punt returns for touchdowns as a rookie. So he brought me with him so that we were able to go back. And the guys were really bent out because he just brought my wife and myself. The kids couldn't go, so they were really bent. Yeah, they've had a deprived life, guys. Yeah,
Just not gone their way.
They're going to hell in a handbag. Yeah, it's all my fault. So anyway, well, hey, look, thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. It was a privilege
been a pleasure.
getting to talk to you.
Yeah, well, if probably we have to have a 2-year dispensation, and maybe you'll forget some of the stuff. You call me back and we can talk again.
Oh, I'm sure we'll be talking a lot.